Everyone, and welcome back to Todos Santos. This is episode 5, and today we're going to be working a little bit more in this kind of extension of the old town. Right now, I'm placing some of these surface rocks. I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do with this at first. I thought maybe have a little bit of development there, but I ended up just kind of going along with that rocky shoreline. And now I'm placing these kind of old retaining walls here along this road that I did off camera. And this road comes off from the rest of the slum area that we made in the last episode. And in this big green area here, we're going to be building a cemetery. So I'm imagining that this is a pretty old cemetery, something that was there originally for in the colonial times, and this was kind of like the nice cemetery. This is where you were buried if you were like really wealthy or really important. And then, over the years it kind of filled up, and now it's really a historical landmark and a tourist destination because it's pretty fancy and cool looking, and it's pretty well maintained. So I kind of fenced off that whole area there with that old brick wall, and these are actually from a cemetery pack, I think by BTB. Yeah, pretty sure. And there's kind of this one main walkway that snakes through the whole thing over, and it kind of terminates in a little area we'll build later. But yeah, so I'm gonna get building that, and I will see you in a couple minutes. So I wanted these mausoleums, I guess you could call them, to be kind of like the most important people that, or at least of European descent, that were on this island at one time or another. Maybe important governors or people who enacted some kind of change or development or something. Kind of like, pretty much anyone you would make a statue of, or they would have made a statue of back in the good old days. So that's what this one is probably like, the most famous person in this fictional Puerto Rico. So he even has a little wall around his area, and it's we end up detailing a little bit in terms of foliage and stuff so that it looks pretty nice and pretty well maintained. So with this kind of build, I'm not going for like super realism. I mean, it is inspired largely by a place in old San Juan, it's a place where you can go up to the castle wall and look down and see this really cool looking cemetery. But I didn't really take anything specific from it. These were really just kind of little flashes of inspiration I had, or ideas I had. I didn't really copy anything, which usually I do. I'll take at least one aspect of something that has inspired me and try to recreate it, because that's a really good way to get a sense for how things are really done in real life, because people that actually develop these things they're not any different than a City Skylines players, and 100% of the time in real life, things you come up with in your head don't translate directly to real life. So if you do everything that pops into your head in the game, it's not going to be necessarily realistic unless you're a master at just observing and replicating. But to kind of acquire that skill, I think it's really good to replicate things in real life. And of course, I didn't really do that here, and I'm not sure how it turns out. I think it looks nice aesthetically. I don't know how realistic it is. But I thought I'd try to kind of go that route for this build, and I think it looks pretty nice. So, yeah. If you have any comments on realism or just, whether it works or not, I'd be happy to hear that. Really, it's nice to get views and likes and subscriptions, but the thing that really keeps me going is the comments. Anytime you have something to say, nice or otherwise, I'm always happy to hear that. So yeah, if you have anything that you want to say, be sure to leave a comment, and that helps a lot. It really keeps me motivated knowing that people are into this enough to comment on it. So thank you to everyone who has left me a comment, and if you haven't, feel free to do so, and yeah, that'll make my day. So I wanted this to be to kind of reflect the fact that there are some pretty old families here, and there are people who still have ancestors here that they come, and or even people that that just individuals are interested in. They come and leave flowers and actually visit this area, not just for the aesthetics, but to have some kind of significant experience. And I kind of wanted to blend these regular bushes, I think by Fidelmo, with these hedges, which I think they might be Fidelmo also. Not sure. Really just all these good trees. Fidelmo or Mr. Mason. Lost Gecko, I think, has a nice set too. But I wanted to blend those together and I wanted the regular bushes to almost look like a type of hedge. And that not only, it gave me flexibility with the length of the hedges, because there's a max or a minimum length on those hedge assets. I think it also adds a really nice texture when you kind of bunch them together like that. Of course, it drops frame rate if you use it too much, which I'm certainly experiencing here, but I think it's totally worth it to get that really nice texture. And I wanted this to be kind of like a little maintenance area. It's maybe not quite as nice looking as the rest of it, because the groundskeeper spends all his time at work taking care of the rest of it and not his own little space. So it's a little, there's dirt and some overgrown grass, but it's still, I think it kind of fits nicely and adds a little bit of variety to the landscape here. So I used a lot of foliage here, a lot of trees. I don't think the hedges and the flowers and stuff are as much of a problem, but I wanted to create almost like the sense that there was a forest down here at one point, and it was cut down for this. So I don't know if it's too much. There's not really too much down yet, but you'll see later in the video the extent to which I do that. And yeah, I think I've been going too heavy on the trees, but that's kind of just how I build, so I might just have to deal with it for now. And another gripe I had with this build is these grave assets. I think they look really nice, but when I have a bunch of them lined up, you can see the pattern pretty clearly from above. And also the angle I kind of had to work with here was a little frustrating. As you can see, there's a lot of overlapping and stuff, but I didn't want to focus too much on the kind of the close-up, how they look in close-up, because I was really going for that overall aesthetic of imagining like looking down from the castle walls above and seeing just these, the repetition of the gravestones. And I think that works nicely, but again, up close it just really doesn't look that good. So I'm going to see if I can find, if I do find some other assets that maybe have a little more variety or could add to the variety of these. I might come back and try to replace it, but I think it's fine for now. And I did kind of want to delineate different areas, like maybe it was, it started as this one small area where there were some larger gravestones, and then eventually they needed more space, so they expanded back, and they had, this next area, and on and on, and there were some nicer areas and some not as nice areas. And I don't know. I don't know if it makes sense logically to like wall off all these areas. I'm not sure. But I think it looks nice from above. And again, that was really my intention with this build. So we'll see I'll come back and look at it in a few episodes and we'll see if it stands up. So I'm going to do some more detailing here, and I will talk to you in just a little bit. Yeah, so this is the part I kind of mentioned before where I start going a little crazy with the foliage. I don't show all of it here in the video, but I put a lot of trees and stuff here because it just looked really bare, and I'm just kind of imagining if you were driving down this road, I feel like I want to have kind of these towering trees here, but I don't know if it's too much, if it's too dense or too thick or what. I do like this spot over here to kind of cover up the base of the castle wall, or at least make it look a little more overgrown. Using some of these grass assets and those bushes. But I think it looks pretty nice. And I run into this problem again later in the episode when we go back to that sort of slum area. But then that's another thing that I don't really show on camera because it's pretty boring. Now I'm replacing the shoreline here. I wanted to have a rocky shoreline. And that asset I had there previously it's a great asset by itself, but when you have 100 of them right next to each other, they don't really look too good. So yeah, I replaced it with some of this nice looking dirt. And I do some more of this seaweed-esque stuff that I did last episode, just to kind of, I don't want to, detail the whole ocean, but some of these important shoreline areas I really do want to get. And I have some trouble with this guardrail. And then, of course, when I finally do it, it ends up being backwards, but that's okay. I will come back and fix that later. I don't know what I was thinking. These awesome stripe markers. That's one of my favorite assets. I just think it adds so much. And more invisible parking. This is kind of a big throwback to Northern Creek, dirt roads and invisible parking. It's good stuff. And I thought it might be nice to have a little bit of a bench area here with a trash can just in this parking lot area. Used very loosely. And now we're starting on this weird little beach neighborhood in the slum. I had these assets and I didn't really know where else I would end up using them, so I thought it would be kind of nice to have a little bit of a beach, rundown looking beach neighborhood here. I I think it's a little dense the way I'm building it now, and I do delete a bunch of these. Again, last episode I mentioned a bunch of these houses don't have road access, so that becomes a problem, and I end up fixing that really by just deleting a lot of the buildings, and I think that's okay because it ends up looking pretty nice. You won't see any of that stuff I just mentioned in the time lapse, but in the cinematics it should be about up to date to where I am currently in the game. So you'll see that. I'm just building this really basic road network and putting some houses down, and we'll do some of those shacks later too, to kind of represent that informal housing that's grown up over the last, I'm imagining the last 30 years or so. So you saw me using Prop It Up there. It's a great mod, but I have had problems using the built-in remove prop option. I think twice now. When I've done that, the game has crashed. So I usually just use the Prop It Up prop set, which are basically just invisible props that replace whatever's in the model or attached to the model. So I personally would recommend that until the remove prop option is a little more stable. Maybe that's something unique to my situation, I don't know, but I can't really recommend it at this point. But the mod as a whole is really useful for assets like this that are really nice, but sometimes have some not so helpful props on them, which is pretty common. The biggest problem, I think, though, is parking lots, and this is mentioned a lot, is there are just absolutely perfect assets that you can't use because there's a parking lot sitting up the front. And sometimes you can adjust the surroundings to fit it, but sometimes that's just not practical or not worth it. But yeah, that's just kind of unfortunate. But I guess that's just kind of a remnant of the days when it was pretty much the vanilla game where you get some assets and they just grow, and the parking lots wouldn't really be a problem there. But in this kind of gameplay, it's pretty important to have control over how your buildings look and how they affect their surroundings. So it's just kind of unfortunate to have to deal with that. But you really can't, I don't think I can fault the asset creators because they put so much work into these awesome buildings. I think if they want to do that, I think they should be able to do that without any kind of reprimand or anything like that, for sure. So I'm not trying to dog on the asset creators too much. I don't think I'm in a position to do that at all. Filling in everything was really hard. For me, I like to have so much control over every little detail that it's sometimes is hard to let go and just kind of fill in an area. So that's something I'm definitely learning with this series, and in some future episodes that I've recorded, it's definitely true, where I just kind of force myself to keep the detailing just enough so it looks good. But I don't need to necessarily fill in every little gap with something that looks nice and is semi-realistic. Because for these areas like this, I definitely want to be fairly detailed. But the most important thing I want to do in this series is have a city that looks cool from above, and that you can kind of fly around above and at least evokes the real location. I'm not necessarily going for like absolute realism with everything. I think that to me is just too dry. I want there to be kind of like focus areas where you can zoom in and the detailing is really nice. And then other than that, I don't want to go too crazy. So that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next week, hopefully. Catch you later. Bye.